The Syrian Civil War, a conflict so brutal, so complex, it has become synonymous with the very image of human suffering. It is a war that has torn apart the very fabric of Syrian society, leaving scars that may never heal. Welcome to Cryptic Mystic Vault, where we dive deep into the hidden history of human civilization. It is a conflict that has claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands, displaced millions more, and left a nation in ruins. Entire cities have been reduced to rubble, and the infrastructure that once supported daily life has been obliterated. This is not just a Syrian tragedy, it is a global crisis, a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked violence and the failure of international diplomacy. The ripple effects of this war have been felt far beyond Syria's borders, impacting neighboring countries and the world at large. This war did not erupt overnight. It was the result of years of mounting tensions and unresolved grievances. To understand the Syrian conflict, we must first understand the decades of oppressive rule, the deep-seated societal tensions, and the cries for reform that were met with brutal repression, and the complex web of international interests that laid the groundwork for this catastrophe. Foreign powers, each with their own agendas, have only added fuel to the fire. This is a story of a people's yearning for freedom, a dream that has been both inspiring and heartbreaking, a story of a revolution hijacked, where initial hopes for change were overshadowed by violence and extremism, and a story of a world that stood by, seemingly powerless, as a nation descended into chaos. The international community's response has been criticized for its inadequacy and lack of decisive action. This is the story of the Syrian Civil War, a conflict that continues to shape the lives of millions and will be remembered as one of the darkest chapters in modern history. To truly grasp the roots of the Syrian conflict, we must journey back to 1970, to the rise of Hafez al-Assad. A military officer, Hafez seized power in a bloodless coup, ushering in an era of authoritarian rule under the Ba'ath Party. His regime was marked by repression, the suppression of dissent, and the brutal silencing of any opposition. Hafez's rule was characterized by a tight grip on power, with no tolerance for political pluralism or freedom of expression. Hafez's son, Bashar al-Assad, inherited this iron grip on power in 2000. Initially, there was hope for reform, a glimmer of possibility that Bashar, a British-educated ophthalmologist, would usher in a new era of openness. Those hopes were quickly dashed as Bashar proved to be a chip off the old block, tightening the regime's control and perpetuating the climate of fear that had become synonymous with the Assad name. The promise of change was replaced by a continuation of the same oppressive tactics, leaving the Syrian people in a state of despair and disillusionment. Beneath the surface of this oppressive regime, resentment simmered. Years of economic mismanagement had left many Syrians struggling to make ends meet. Unemployment was rampant, particularly among the youth. Corruption was endemic, further fueling the discontent that permeated Syrian society. The Assads, while belonging to the Alawite sect, ruled over a predominantly Sunni population. This sectarian divide, coupled with the regime's brutal tactics, created a powder keg, primed for ignition. The stage was set for an uprising, a desperate cry for change from a people long denied their basic rights and freedoms. In 2011, the winds of change sweeping the Arab world reached Syria. Inspired by the uprisings in Tunisia and Egypt, Syrians too dared to dream of a different future. Peaceful protests erupted across the country, demanding political reforms, an end to corruption, and greater freedoms. The Assad regime responded with the same brutality it had always shown. Peaceful protesters were met with live ammunition. Arbitrary arrests, torture, and extrajudicial killings became the norm. The regime's brutal crackdown only fueled the flames of dissent, transforming peaceful protests into armed rebellion. From protest to proxy war, as the uprising gained momentum, it fractured along sectarian lines. The Syrian army, largely composed of Alawites loyal to Assad, found itself pitted against a fragmented opposition, a mix of civilian rebels and Islamist groups. The conflict escalated into a full-blown civil war, a complex and brutal struggle with no easy answers. The international community, initially hesitant to intervene, watched in horror as the situation spiraled out of control. Regional powers, each with their own agendas, poured weapons and money into the conflict, turning Syria into a proxy battleground for their own geopolitical ambitions. The Syrian Civil War is not just a conflict confined to Syria's borders. It is a global crisis with far-reaching implications. The conflict has fueled the rise of extremist groups such as ISIS, which exploited the chaos to seize territory and spread its ideology of terror. The war has triggered an unprecedented refugee crisis, with millions of Syrians fleeing their homes in search of safety. Neighboring countries like Lebanon, Jordan, and Turkey have borne the brunt of this exodus, straining their resources and social fabric. The ripple effects of the conflict have been felt across the globe, from the shores of Europe to the streets of America. As we stand here today, the Syrian Civil War grinds on, a seemingly intractable conflict with no end in sight. The echoes of gunfire and the cries of the displaced continue to reverberate through the land. The country lies in ruins, its economy shattered, its social fabric torn apart. Families have been separated, communities destroyed, and the very essence of Syrian culture has been deeply scarred. The scars of this war will take generations to heal, if ever. The psychological wounds inflicted on the people, especially the children, are profound and long-lasting. What does the future hold for Syria? The path to recovery seems daunting and fraught with challenges. Can there ever be a true and lasting peace after so much bloodshed and destruction? The hope for reconciliation seems distant, yet it is a hope that must be nurtured. These are questions that haunt not only Syrians but all of us who have borne witness to this tragedy. The international community watches, often feeling helpless yet compelled to act. One thing is certain. The Syrian Civil War serves as a stark reminder of our collective humanity and the urgent need for peace, justice, and reconciliation. It's a call to action for all of us to strive for a better, more peaceful world. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more mind-blowing discoveries and thrilling adventures into the past.